failure to launch and addictions. Two things I just wanted to talk to you, John Krejci, about for quite a while. Gosh, I think I've known you maybe 20 years. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's right at 20, dude.
Yeah.
Somewhere around 2004, 2005 would have been when we met. So yeah,
Yeah.
21.
Well, with my new book, of course, thank you for looking over it, Taboo. I've been looking for someone that's in the field around addiction with men, and I see it also connected to the topic that's getting more press, failure to launch with young men, which just means people are concerned that they're not getting out of the house, not motivated. The perception is they might be overplaying video games or addicted to them.
Yeah. Nice work on the book, Martin. You and I are definitely kindred spirits. And I love the way that you help people, and I love the way you think about these things. So I'm happy to be talking with you. The breakfast we had, the coffee when we had you, we got on the conversation looking at that model that I'd showed you, and
Yeah.
the link between the developmental stuff and the normal developmental stuff and the disrupted thing. And so basically trauma, whether, and sometimes that word is overused, but the things that are trauma or trauma like really affect us, create more vulnerabilities, may create vulnerabilities to addiction, and also really give people a real hit in their motivation. Trauma could be discussed as your relationship to adrenaline,
Mhm.
and addiction can be discussed as your relationship to dopamine. And so that's like, that's your relationship to things going well and motivation and going out and getting what you need or what you want. So that ambition, and it also gets mixed in with that arousal to the point of anxiety, to the point of, I don't know, I'm afraid I won't get what I want and I can't do what I want. And I think that if I remember right, that was kind of a different way to say it, but that's what we were getting at when you said, hey, maybe we should do a podcast.
That's why I said I'd love to have a conversation of what's the continuum between just motivation and wanting to continue doing something like a commitment. You wake up, or Elon, who has a commitment to getting us to Mars, and an addiction. And I thought you really broke it down and described it well with your own process that you've built out.
Yeah. So oftentimes it's good to say the just the shorthand presenting level and then dig in as deep as well as it makes sense for the current conversation. So the
Right.
short version that I offer to you on that one is that people use motivation as kind of a misnomer. They need to, like, I need to get motivated. Well, you don't actually really get motivated. You can get disciplined, right? Right? Do the thing I don't want to do because it's the right thing to do. Say no to pleasures and say yes, I'll endure some pain because whatever's out there is worth doing it for. That is discipline. Motivation is when you find something that draws you forward or puts some wind in your sails. Like, what do you really want? And so that's the thing that I think ties the developmental process and the healing process from both trauma and addiction, is helping someone figure out what they would really want if they could have it.
I
Like,
see.
I think most people could build a life that they would want.
Uh-huh.
But that doesn't mean that you can have whatever you want. It just means that if you engage and discover what skills you have and what interests you have and what needs there are out there, you could put something together where you could learn what you need to learn so that you can offer what you need to offer, so that you're expressing yourself in the world and you're meeting other people's needs and getting paid for it. Like, those things fit together. That's how it works.
That's quite interesting. Now, I just have a caveat in my world. not as a therapist, but as a coach, I'm an advocate of structure even over discipline. You know,
Sure.
the best way to be disciplined not to eat cookies is remove them from the house. So,
Oh yeah.
but
Right there with you. Right there with you. Because you can't live on discipline.
right.
You have to have discipline to succeed, but you also have to have motivation. You have to have something you want. There's got to be a reason to go from here to there, or to put up with school, or to work and do things you don't really want to do because it gets you something that you would want. And there's going to be days that you don't want it. So there's got to be some clarity and some discipline to get you through the low times. And there's got to be some wind in your sails that makes it worth doing day in, day out.
What I'm hearing here is that the motivation, what you want, can get distracted by something that you're spending all your time on that might be the addiction. So is it there seems to be a relationship between those. It's like
Okay.
what you
Yes.
really want versus I feel I can't get it, so I'll obsess over this.
Yes. Okay. That can come in the form of comfort, and that's usually what you're thinking about in the trauma situations. And if you're more clearly identifying addiction, basically you got easy access to dopamine. So dopamine isn't really all about pleasure. There's pleasure in oxytocin, that's calming, and serotonin, there's comfort in that. The dopamine is about motivated pursuit. So it's aroused enough, urged enough. It's when you're so hungry you're mad, or you're thirsty and there's a line of people in front of you. It's like, can't you hurry up? That angsty thing that feels good when you're activated by it. That's dopamine. Well, you get that by figuring out what you really want. When you figure out what you really, really want and you move toward that, you get releases of dopamine. And that fuels you to do other things that you might not want to do. Like you'll get up early and pack the car to go on a trip. Kids will do all kinds of things to go golfing or hunting or do some activity. Go to Disney World. You'll do all kind. Get up for Christmas. There's all kinds of things you'll do that you wouldn't ordinarily do when you feel motivated. Um, but day in, day out, every day, you need something. Well, the bridge that people often use is, well, video games or weed or alcohol or other things that give you dopamine spikes. And those dopamine spikes are often much higher than contemplating a future. So if you um if you wind up getting attached to something that gives you comfort and dopamine, like, well, video games are in that category. And video games are interesting because they're exciting, they test your skills, they usually operate on some kind of a hero's journey, or adventure format. So they mimic going out and doing something significant, and they give you immediate dopamine spikes that are high, usually higher than sitting there thinking about the future. Well, oh my gosh, if you have this dopamine right here with no resistance, no inertia, nothing that you have to plow through, that the reason it becomes addiction is because you get that spike and it's so easy to go to.
Is there kind of a sign that somebody might be addicted other than just enjoying something? Is there like
Oh
a,
yeah.
like a red flag of because I mean, I really see I don't play video games, but I really see I talk to younger people and I see the fun in them. I can see the adventure in them. I mean, if I wanted to take a break and it was easy to do, it might be fun to enjoy them. One of them I just think I'm not smart enough to keep up with some of those things that are going on,
Right.
but I admire it, and I love chatting with people that are younger that know. In fact, often that's an opening conversation. I say, "You into any videos?" And they tell me which one, and I learn something. We have a conversation around it. So is there a line between, okay, this is something that I'm enjoying and it's fine, but now this has crossed the line where this might be an addiction. Maybe I need some help. Maybe I need to find a way to take a break from it. What are those warning signs?
Yep. Dude, that's a great question. My mentor, Dennis Parnell, had a saying I really loved. He'd say, if it's not a problem, it's not a problem. And so if you got someone who likes to have a drink every now and then, and or even regularly, if they have one or two drinks and put it aside, they don't have a problem. Alcohol's not a problem for them. And but when alcohol starts becoming necessary or causing problems like DUIs or not being able to socially interact or waking up depressed or being anxious and not being able to sleep without having it, when you start having problems that are directly related to the substance or the activity and it's interfering with your functioning, then now it's a problem. So what do you do when it's a problem? Right? With alcohol, you want to find out whether you are addicted. You want to, and the best way to do that is to remove yourself from it from a period of time and look at what happens in that process. Um, if someone is using video games as a substitute for going out and doing something that's necessary, then so is it causing them to of are they avoiding social interactions, both recreational and work? Because are they not going out and getting a job or applying for a job? Are they the number of hours you would spend would be one way to measure that, but what's the impact of the use? So if video games are a part of your life, wonderful. Great. They can be a great social thing in all kinds of ways. Like that's an integral part of more so than movies for this generation. And great, good for them. But if it takes over your life, if it becomes a central thing in your life, then you have to ask, where are the problems? Where's it interfering? What are the results?
I think that really helps add some clarity to it. So it's like how big a problem it is, and I guess some of the risk of it is if you're really engulfed in it, it's hard to see if it's a problem sometimes. So it might be if you
Oof, boy,
wonder,
that's a great point.
you know, if you wonder, just try stopping it and see is it a tug like sort of feeling like a narcotic tug, like I can't live without it, or is it oh I kind of miss it?
Frankly, that's precisely what I do if someone is questioning whether they have a problem with alcohol. Like straightforward, you can get cut through everything by saying, "Well, you know, go 30 days without it."
Mhm.
And like if that brings up a, "Oh crap. Oh no, yuck. I don't know what I'll do." Then you also have your answer to your question.
Right,
And so with the video games, if you go like, dude, you need to do it, people talk about a dopamine detox or something
right.
like that. If you're wondering whether you're doing it too much, it's a great idea to step away from it a little bit. See what comes up for you. What comes
Yeah,
up for you? What else you might do with your time? If you can step away for a little bit, the other payoff is that you'll actually enjoy the activity even more when you go back to it.
uh-huh. Yeah, it's just like, I'm working my latest round of breaking my carb addiction, and I love what my best friend says, food tastes better when you delay eating it. I mean, really,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, great. Now I got a book out that talks about addictions, and I still not pleased with my it's not that carbs, I just have a thing where under certain stress, I'll eat at night, and that's the kiss of death of losing weight. The holidays are here and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, what can I do to set up structure? And I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
my doctor saying that the addiction to carbs operates chemically in the body very similar to like a narcotic. that really helped me because I go, why am I so weak in this area? I've gotten other things done, I can get the exercise done, but this is one I'm most vulnerable to.
Yeah, Martin, one of the things that stood out to me when I was first volunteering at the Healing Place, the recovery addiction and recovery center for people who are homeless. Um, they have a food line there, and I was volunteering there. Actually, that's where I met my wife. But I noticed that, and I was new to that kind of work. That was about 25 years ago or so,
Mhm.
and I noticed that people come in and get coffee, and they would just pour tons and tons of sugar. Like, okay, dude, when are you gonna put that down? But they're still, they're pouring the sugar in, and it amazed me how much. And Dennis explained to me that that sugar goes down some of the same pathways, stimulates some of the same pathways as alcohol. And in fact, if you think about sorbitol or xylitol, those are sugar alcohols. Those are literally what they are. And so they do stimulate some of those same pathways.
Mhm.
And there's a very similar dynamic that happens with insulin resistance. With insulin, as happens with dopamine, is that when cells are bathed with a lot of insulin, they become resistant to it. The receptors shut down. And same thing happens with dopamine. So you wind up needing more to get that same stimulation. And that's the dynamic that everybody experiences. The first time's great. The next time might be great, but it's less good. And then the next time is less good. And over a period of time, things kind of lose their appeal.
Mhm.
That receptor thing is part of the driver of that.
I say
In
it's
fact,
over.
you may find this interesting. There's a short saying, it's a little cutesy, but very real, is that things that are addictive start off as magic and they move to medicine and then they go to misery.
Mhm. Great quote.
Oh, it's really powerful
Yeah.
because as you get desensitized, you need more and more. And and at first it feels so good and you're enjoying the experience. Most people are in that medicine phase. They're taking things as they're self-medicating. They're self-medicating their boredom, their social anxiety, their need to sleep, general anxiety, depression. All of those
Mhm.
things, because they're often in cycles and they're self-medicating, but that medicine becomes less and less effective over time. And the activities wind up being affecting, being affected more and more.
I think it's important to look at how much it's affecting your life, like you just said. And I grew up in DC, and when I was younger, the big accomplishment was everyone, if you had a basement with an active bar, then you had made it.
Ha!
you know
Yeah,
and I'm not sure that a large number of people in Washington were not what I kind of call functional alcoholics, because it's like come home from work and then you're downstairs and got sloshed before dinner, and that was an accomplishment.
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah, absolutely.
and I think the biggest thing in my house is my dad wasn't big on it. My mother gets a headache with alcohol, so it kind of slowed there, the
Yeah.
attraction in. But my uncle at least had a basement with a bar, and that was kind of a big deal. So
Uh-huh.
I think another thing about addictions is it sort of keeps us away from a certain level of satisfaction that comes with struggle and mastery. That just kind
Oh,
of popped in
wow.
my head.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful, dude. Yes,
the
it's a
fact, and
hundred
I
percent.
talk about that. Of course, that's one of the core components in the book Taboo. Part of maturing as a man is working with a mentor, where you're learning delayed gratification mastery, but you're also getting a certain type of food by that one-on-one interaction that occurs.
Oh gosh, there's so much wrapped up in what you just said, dude. Like, let's go structure first and then relational. Both of them matter. I mean, relational often matters first, but in this case, let's start with structure. When you figure out what's important to you, what's most important to you, you're going to move toward that. You're going to get dopamine releases for doing that, and you're going to feel good about the things that are related to that. If you loved, let's keep it like simple. hunting.
Mhm.
Hunting is the archetypal dopamine driven drive. Your seeking circuits are activated when you're hunting. And pretty much anything is hunting. Shopping
Mhm.
is hunting.
Right, right.
Video games are hunting, right?
Mhm.
They play on that hunting drive.
Right.
Well, when you're hunting something, if you're a real like hunting, like you enjoy people who love hunting, duck hunting, they think about it all year long. And they buy
Right.
hats that have duck related or
Things on it. Yeah.
paraphernalia related things on it. And they plan their stands and their places where they go, and they plan the trip itself, and they get up really early in the morning and they bought all the equipment and they wear the paraphernalia that identifies them with that. And every one of those things has the excitement of duck hunting. And
Mhm.
and and so all kinds of activities that would require a lot of discipline are done with enthusiasm and joy. It's not work, it's
Mhm.
part of the fun. Well,
Right.
as an individual starts working out in their own mind what matters to them, and like being committed to figuring out, I am a seeker, I am in the process of figuring out what's important, operates as well as knowing what's important.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's a well as, because there's a tangibility when you can actually really visualize something. But if you can see yourself as earnestly engaged in the process of figuring out what matters,
Mhm.
then that operates in that same dopamine driven way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. So if you got that going for you, you're going to evaluate things in light of its relationship to you getting what matters.
Mhm.
So if you're driving around the triangle one day and you're just out for a joyride and somebody cuts you off, that might be the most significant thing in your day.
Mhm.
But if you're headed toward, instead of joyriding, you're headed toward a meeting that matters, a
Mhm.
job or something that's really significant for you,
Mhm.
and somebody cuts you off, you're going to be annoyed in the moment and you're going to pull around them and continue going.
Mhm.
It's going to be way down in the hierarchy of what matters by virtue of comparison. So
Yeah.
you want to have things that matter to you because it actually starts to set up the whole hierarchy of your life.
Mhm.
So does that flow to you?
Yeah, it does. And several things about the antidote to addiction. I'm going to try this out.
Okay, sure.
What if mentoring, mastery, and this kind of taking on something that pulls you outside yourself, where you have to be in that confusion long enough to reorient yourself? I mean, really, if you look at people that learn a new language, they've studied that they almost develop another version of themselves they step into, so they break out of that
Awesome. Yes.
traditional mold. Or even in the golf or hunting, I mean, what I understand is there's a lot of training that occurs to learn how to get accurate enough to do it, bow hunting or something else. When you're doing that, it creates, I believe, a deeper satisfaction than the quick hit of just an addiction. And that's why I talk about, that's one of the core things for supporting men in maturing, is that they've worked with another man. You talked about your mentor. I took on learning massage therapy 101 with Scotty Young because I realized I want to take this on and see what occurs, and the vulnerability and the experience and the kind of food that transfers in mentoring gives us satisfaction because I have to be vulnerable. I have to be learning something. I mean, at a 101 level, he does structural integration. So it's real personal. It's basically kind of like Ralphing. Learning that at that level to me moves us into a world of confusion, disorientation, and reintegration that's left a satisfaction that's much richer than something I could easily get and got that dopamine hit.
Okay. Let me see if I can describe the underlying structure of what you just described. I said this about to you about your book personally, is that there are so many things that you do that are embodiments of the key elements that I think matter. And you just did that there. You said, let me see if I can bring it back. You used targeting like golf or hunting. You used relationship
Yeah.
and modeling or patterning. Both those two big things, right? If somebody you respect and admire does something, there's something in you that wants to be like that, that wants
Hmm.
to emulate them. And you also want some of what they want.
Yeah.
If somebody is worthy of your respect, there's something about them you want to be like. And that's a big motivational driver.
Yeah.
And if you see someone else willing to suffer, like willing to go through the pain and managing themselves and dealing with what needs to be done to get to where you want to go, you go, oh, yeah, that's normal. That's what ought to be done. That's respectable. And if you're with somebody in it, it makes the load lighter.
Yeah.
Okay, there are some drivers underneath that that are amazing to me. One of the things that makes people vulnerable to addiction is that they wound up getting wounded when they were younger in primary relationships. So they don't have that mentoring. So having mentoring can be a healing replacement for some things that happen early on. The other interesting thing to me is memory consolidation and memory reconsolidation. And I don't know how deep you want to go there, but I think a short version would be when you're doing a targeting. I'm doing targeting like I'm throwing darts, but whether it's golf or something else, you're almost always targeting something. When you hit it just right, or it lands just right,
Yeah.
like that dart, when it hits the bullseye,
Right.
it's like, ah, you get a dopamine flood of all the circuits that were involved in that activity. Even the people you were talking to, the music you were listening to, but all of it just gets brought into that activity. It's nostalgia. It's the same element that makes you think. And when you think about Christmas, you think about family and food and presents and lights and Christmas stories and like all that just kind of unfolds. Well, that's what happens in addiction. You start building this whole landscape of things that are emotionally connected to what you're doing.
Hmm.
Well, underneath that is that dopamine drive. All those circuits get flooded. Um, and when you go to sleep, those circuits run backwards. They run in reverse at about 20 times the speed. And that's part of memory consolidation. Now, same thing happens with negative memories. Even with the targeting thing, if you when you miss it, it's like ah, and then those circuits that were involved in you missing it get flooded with adrenaline. And both of those things, the dopamine and adrenaline, tag stuff for long-term memory. Now, that's geeky, I know, but what happens with that is that becomes your norm, your implicit memory, your what feels right, the pathway you keep going down. The memory reconsolidation is when you do something different that matters more. Or you bring up, in the case of trauma, you bring up that memory, that painful memory, and you revisit it with something that's more true. I say that because trauma is quite often the thing that sets up the vulnerability to addiction. But in either case, trauma or addiction, when you start patterning healthy behaviors as alternatives to the harmful ones, and you experience those as more true, more helpful, more enjoyable, more social, those kind of things, you get this memory reconsolidation that happens. That old memory gets replaced with the new one. Not like you forget the old one, but you have a different relationship to it that's not all right. Did I go off too much on
No,
that, or
no,
is
that
that
was cool. That was cool. And this gets into the fact of I think we've done a very good job of distinguishing when something becomes a addiction that's a problem with your life versus displacing it and having something bigger that draws you to it is probably an important aspect. In fact, in my own experience of working with people who are miserable in their jobs and want to get out of it and coaching them, I go, we need to get something outside in your life going that's so compelling and constructive that you'll be able to put up with more crap until we can get the better job. And it
So
works.
so yeah, dude, and that's so important. And here's part of the struggle with that. A sunset, a good meal might be 100 in sort of objective units of subjective units of dopamine, whereas some drugs would be a couple of hundred, and certain ones would be 1,000. And so that's where that structure part of what you talked about becomes so important. You have to be willing to do something that makes more sense than you in order to train the structures inside of you that dopamine seek. You want to train them to seek their dopamine from a lower level source that's more consistent. And like, dude, you can tell someone that is high dopamine seeking, it won't make you happy. It's the in relationship, dating apps are dopamine seeking adventures. And people really play that game. But if you ask most people what they really, really want, it would be a long-term, steady relationship with someone they respect. Well, you're not going to get the same dopamine spikes. You're going to get oxytocin and serotonin and occasional dopamine spikes, but you are going to be so much happier.
Right.
I'm wondering how that lines up with some of the things that you advise for people. To me, it's the underlying dynamic behind the structure. Do the
Yeah.
structure that matters, and you'll start training your biology and your psychology that, oh, this life-giving stuff that feels good.
Yeah,
It
I'll
doesn't.
give an example of one client. We're working to. She hired me to get her a better job and a career change, and we got her gardening. You know, and doing finding a way to appease the indicators needed in the job, and then the gardening allowed her to put up with what looked like complete BS to her, but necessary to keep the lights on because she needed the income. And then that allowed her to give enough time to be able to make the connections to get the other job. And so it's, to me, that's the aspect I was just seeing a connection with what we were talking about.
Okay, so that seems really important to me to elaborate on, because something I said earlier would could be interpreted like you have to have a job that brings you to life so that you can structure your life around that and keep things straight. And it's great when it works out that way. But the majority of people have jobs that help them make a living. Most people don't have careers that fulfill them emotionally. The vast majority of people don't. And so, and in the example you described is, well, that's a reason why you don't have to have that. We got to till the land, you have to have food, you got to make a living, and you want to find a way to express yourself and have an impact in the world and have the world impact you in a way that is feels fulfilling.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It's kind of like I think one of the worst lies that came out is the idea of just do what you love and the money will follow. Because
yeah,
I fell into that trap for a while, and then I
yeah, yeah,
realized
yeah.
no,
I as a
you
young
need to
man.
do what generates money, and that gives you the utilities to be able to do more of what you love. Now, if you can land, like you said, you happen to land a way to do what you love, and it'll actually come in. That's great. I mean, there are a few miracles that really do occur and so forth. But the most of us are going to have to do a lot of things, taking out the trash, cleaning the toilet, and everything else on that journey to get to the point where you have more resources to do it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue, if you want to do something, let's say be a teacher, and and pursue it because you'd love to be a teacher, but you do want to work out what type of income that's going to bring, what are the pros and cons, and then so maybe get underneath what is that, what is that desire underneath, and can I increase more than one way to satisfy it, which gives me more options.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because in the other scenario where you're doing music or you're doing teaching or you're doing something else that you love, that love becomes a job with a bunch of tasks that are not enjoyable that you have to do, and sometimes can suck the life or the passion out of that thing that you were doing. And so they really are two different questions that for some people overlap. I like
Absolutely.
that.
Well, the other topic we were going to cover that I think we're going to have to cover at another time is the concept of failure to launch. And I really think we've dug into this. I'm, I want to do that as a whole different show, but
Okay.
I think that's another important thing that you've worked on that's related to my book 100%. The idea
Yeah.
of we don't have the socialization to support young men to develop maturing. And when you don't, they're either going to act in or act out. And that's what we're seeing in our society. And it's something you work with. You help
Yes.
young men in that
Yes.
area. So I really want to
I am
acknowledge that.
passionate about it. It matters to me.
Yeah.
The things we were discussing today are the biological and psychological dynamics that lead into that.
Right.
And so traumas really do give people take a real hit when they have a trauma in terms of their trust and their desire to engage socially. A lot of times it's attachment related stuff. So how they navigate social environments, etc. And addictions are often the alternative that people are using to self-medicate that lead, and both of those things lead to that failure to launch kinds of dynamics.
This to me is leading to at least another show. And I think
Okay.
it should just be on
Yeah.
failure to launch. This is what we did is let's just see what happens. We know each other. I loved that you said let's try an informal thing and we can throw it out if it didn't work. I think this is really useful, and I want to get scheduled as soon as we can a show really just talking about the whole idea of failure to launch, because
Yeah.
to me it's integrated into your work, but it's also completely obvious in
Oh
the
yeah.
work I've done in Taboo. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
if young men need certain socialization components to mature and we've taken away almost all of those, what's going to happen? Well, they're either going to call act in or act out. Act out, you cause major problem in society. Act in, you don't leave the house and you do the one thing where you can at least win a little playing a video game, but where it consumes all of your life.
Yeah, Martin, this ties back to the first part of the conversation to me, and it's part of why I really liked your book, and it's what I really like about you and the way you work with people is you understand the need for structure and the need for passion, the need to be in touch with your emotions and your desires, and how relationship really requires both of those, and life success you're just not going to have it. I mean, if you want it, you need to pursue relationship, you need to pursue that emotional expression and awareness and expression, and you need to set up structures that support you doing that. And you got a beautiful balance of intuitively tying all those things together in recommendations that get people moving in the direction they need to go so that they can start building momentum and building the processes and the relationships that they need to reinforce it. And I think it's wonderful. I loved your book. I'm happy to have another conversation.
Finish up, I just want you to tell people what you do, because I've known you before you became an amazing therapist and working with people with a commitment to always being a contribution to now someone I'd highly recommend and have in your field. So please just share with people what you do for a living.
Oh, thank you. So, yeah, that's right, Martin. We didn't talk about that. So, you and I know each other from the men's work and growing up and doing men's work and coaching and that kind of stuff. And when I was 50, which is over 10 years ago, I decided to go back to school and become a therapist. And I'm so glad I did because it gets me it allows me to do the kind of work I love. And I specialize in this trauma, addiction, failure to launch, and the related dynamics among them. Um, I like to help hard to help kids because I think I was one of those hard to help people, and some people really helped me. And honestly, most people really in the end aren't that hard to help. Most people are hurting. They want to be seen in that hurt, and they want to be helped to see a pathway out of it that they can believe. And so that's the kind of work I do as a therapist. And I'm also
Outstanding.
active with Journeyman
Oh
Triangle.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We got to do. I want to get someone interview someone with the journeyman thing, but that's a whole nother thing where you're reaching
Okay,
out to
so we'll do
schools and
something.
working with young men, and so definitely we'll do that. Okay. Well, this was just delightful, John, and watch out for a new one. Either I want to get it as soon as possible, especially just the whole conversation of failure to launch, because you have a model that's a therapeutic model and I have a model that's like my life as an experiment
Yeah,
on the journey. And I think they're both extremely important. I'm just,
they really integrate, dude.
yeah,
Both
yeah.
are
I mean,
required.
we met with it, and I just want to keep pushing you to get your workbook, your training, and everything out there more in the world of what I've seen your model and what you've done. And I'm going. I think every therapist needs to hear this. We'll get it scheduled soon. This was fantastic, and I really look forward to the next conversation.
Great, Martin. As usual, great spending time with you. Take care.
Thanks.